So you are going to use Kali Linux for this. It is the best platform that you can use some of the tools that we're going to be talking about. And so you can find Kali on the link that's provided. When you visit that link again, you need to download the one for VirtualBox, which is what's referred to in this class. At home, you need to download the VirtualBox app and its extension package, along with 7-zip to play your VM. So if you do this on your laptop or your home computer, just make sure that you have VirtualBox and then make sure that you have 7-zip to extract your virtual machine, because they compress it, right? So I downloaded it. It's in my downloads folder. Once you get the downloads, you just right click, go to show more options, select your decompression tool, which is 7-zip. You have to use 7-zip, and then extract files. Some of you have done this last week and you still have your files there, but in the case you start all over, you can follow the steps. So I extracted and it placed the extracted folder in my downloads folder. The instructions tell you to double click it, but I'm gonna mount it to my app. So a way that you can do that is you are going to call up your app, VirtualBox, or type in Oracle. And just click on the app. So I'm here, right? And I have no, you might have already Kali on your playlist if you have added it previously. So any virtual machine that you have played before is going to be added to your playlist here. So let's say that I have a new app and I want to add my extracted VM. I'm going to click add, go to my downloads folder where I extracted, click that, and then open up the extracted folder and its subfolder and find the blue file. So what's the benefit of doing this compared to double clicking the file is because when you mount it, you can control the setting before you launch it. If you double click the blue file, it typically start the virtual machine with the default setting. Then you have to shut it down if you want to change RAM or processor, right? In the future, you are going to have to change. And typically I do that so that way I can run scanners and not be slow with obtaining results. Okay? So you can change your setting by clicking settings and then modify this to give it more RAM. So whatever the hardware that you have on your computer, if you have 16 gig, that should be okay with giving your virtual machine 8 gig. And your host just need at least 4 gig, 4 plus some to run the app. So don't take away all your RAM from the host, your Windows host. Um, so I typically give the virtual machine 8 gig. That should be good enough. And then the processor by default it's dual core, so you can give it quad core. And in the Alienware it has 16 cores, so you can run multiple virtual machine like what I mentioned before, right? As long as you have adequate core to support it. So if you change your setting, once you do that, you click OK, check in the base memory and the processor, and then you click start. So once you start, you would log in with your user. By default, that will be Kali and Kali, Kali. And then you always start with an update command. The reason why you do that is some of you have learned that when you're trying to install packages like DVWA, if you don't have the latest update, it's going to throw an error. The way Linux is designed is it's only going to be allowing you to install if you have the current kernel, right? And the most current kernel and also the updates for related software to meet the requirements. So, now we are going to make our system our web server, like what we've done in the previous week, we're gonna run a vulnerable web app by installing this package. They already coded for you, so why not use it? It is a really good way to practice as well. So basically, DVWA run port 80, HTTP instead of HTTPS. So when you install and activate it or start it, it's going to open up that port and it's going to run the app through that port 80. Okay? So we're going to make our system a web server running web packages, running web application, but vulnerable web application. The reason why I do this is you can do it to test. So let's say that you test a company web application and it's not secure. What does it look like, right? Okay, let's log in and you can click the little small blue X to kind of expand your screen. We drag this over here and put this over here. Okay, so once we're in the desktop, we're gonna open up terminal. You can click the black square, or you can press Control-Alt-T. That's the shortcut key for open up terminal in Linux. Just make sure you click on the machine when you do that, and then open up your terminal. Then once you do that, we're gonna do a sudo apt update and put in our password, which is KALI. So once I have my updates, then I'm going to find the system IP address. So realistically, you want to have the public IP address for your server, right? If you have 1,000 server, you better have a list of public IP. So I was telling my class last night that if you know scripting in Python, you can obtain 1,000 server IP address by one script because you can have it in the loop. So it's just going to request, right, submit that command to each system. It's going to ask for the name and an IP address. So you can do it automated. We have a class CIS 30B for Python for networking and then 30C for Python for cybersecurity. I hope to offer that in the summer and fall. I think me, myself, and I usually teach those classes unless we find someone else that's capable of doing that. So if you've taken A and you're interested in obtaining Python programming certificate, it's going to take you from regular Python, basic Python programming, all the way to Python for networking, security, IoT, and advanced Python, which is offered this semester for data science. So once I have the updates, I'm going to do step 12, which is going to be finding IP address. And I know the IP address for you, but you are going to look at the INET under Ethernet 0 because the virtual machine sees itself connecting using Ethernet port, even when you're running a laptop and wireless on your host, right? It's just the way that they designed the hypervisor. So you're going to see the item 2 and the address is 10.0.2.15. I want to point out the 127 address. This is known as a loopback address. This is how the system sees itself in the network environment. So when you're using local hosts, okay, that's the IP address that it sees itself as. So when you use a local host on the URL, in the back it plugs in the loopback address typically, right? For that service. So your browser is a way that we can connect to ourselves, or we treat it like another system, but it is itself, right? So locally, if you put this up as a web server, you can test it through its own browser to see if you can connect to it. So all systems sees itself in the network as a different entity by the loopback address. So Once I have the IP address I recorded, it will be 10.0.2.15. And then I'm going to run NGINX. NGINX install Apache 2 with it. This is the way that we can run web packages or web services on Linux systems. So it uses Apache 2, right, with NGINX. So when you publicly, if you grab banner from a Linux server, in the internet or in the larger networks, you would see a lot of them use NGINX. Okay, so we're gonna install it. So you know how to set up web through this exercise, right? At least also with the default landing page. Because basically this is a setup to simulate a web server so you can attack, or you can scan it. I shouldn't say attack, scan it. So it's gonna prompt you yes or no. We're gonna say yes to proceed, so type Y. And with the web server, we are going to install damn vulnerable web app. Because not all web server are just content based. So if you go to a website and it's only having like the company information, yeah, that's just a static page. But we want an interaction through a web app, like to pay bill, to fill out forms, to put a comment, right? So there's a package that's already created for security. We're gonna also use this for SQL injection later. And it has a small database. So we are going to install DVWA like what we did before. So sudo apt install DVWA. If you took if you're taking 41A or you took 41A, there's some similarity in the lab, but I expanded on it because the setup for the web is the same across. Okay? So it's not repeat of the lab. There's different tools that we're using in this class compared to the 41A. Okay, so I'm going to install the web app that's vulnerable. Again, it's using port 80 and it's only HTTP, so no encryption. Okay. So after you install, you're going to activate the app, right? So we are going to do a start command with DVWA. So if you want to build a home lab and you want to use Kali Linux, this is the way to go, right? You set up your server, you install your security unsecure app, and then you're gonna run it, and then you can launch attack against it, kind of learn what it's gonna respond. So after that, we are going to we're going to start our app, and it's going to prompt you for the password. Type in KALI. You can use the same terminal, so it's going to open up the app for you, right? You can leave that open, minimize it if you want. So we just want to run the app. So that means that the connection is continuous in that server, right? So if I want, like, let's say I click on pay bill, right? It opens up the app that way. But most of the time we're going to use HTTPS to pay bill. In this case, we're going to use HTTP, okay? Now I'm going to teach you how to bind using Python for your server, okay? In Python, Python 3 is equipped with Kali Linux and most Debian releases, so you don't have to install it. If you're using other releases, you have to install Python 3, but by practice, a lot of Linux release have Python 3. And if you took my Python class, you can type in Python 3 dash dash version, right? To see if it's there. Python 3 is different than Python 2. Python 2 is discontinued, no longer supported, but you do see some business using it. There's different in syntax between the versions, but the current version we're going to use is the 3, right? Doesn't matter 3.x, 3.11, 14, etc. It's Python 3. Okay? So you can do Python 3 right? You can copy and paste the command and -m, and you're going to do http.server --bind, and the IP address that you're running web services on, and the port number, so space 9000. So that means that I am opening port 9000 on my system, that window, right? For my HTTP server for bind. So, and it tells you that this is open. Don't close the window. You can open up as many terminals as you want. So this allows you to have that service in that port. So remember that ports are like windows and doors to the house. You can enter through that door, you can exit through another door like a back door, you can open a window to let the bird in, etc. Right? So ports are like ways that we can have different services for our system. So port 9000 is used on this system, right, for server bind. So when you scan, you might see that port, right? That's why I want to point out is what we configure, it's going to show up on the result. And also port 80 for our damn vulnerable web app. Now, we don't just have a server, we're going to have a landing page, and you can use echo command to append the text like welcome to my server, right? This is my first, whatever you want. So you can run this command and you can create an index HTML, right? I wanted to do this without having to go through like all the HTML formatting with heading and title. So you just do like a very simple page. So open up another terminal. Okay. It says that. In a second terminal, open it up. Don't close the first one. We're going to paste the command and run it. So at this point, if you are successful, you are going to have your first landing page in index HTML. So all landing page is index HTML, right? And then now we're going to test to see if our server actually works, right? If you watch all my YouTube video, I've done this on Raspberry Pi in different version. I've done, so there's different ways that you can activate your web server and different services and also make like, I did a full like web page with HTML with colors and stuff with the non-credit student. That's kind of fun to do too. So I want to run Firefox. And you can open the browser and do the same thing, right? And then I want to do the full URL. So http:// and then the IP address of my server. Let me see. Oh. I have. So it tells me that unable to connect, right? Why do you think that is? I have my services running and I'm typing in the right IP address, but if you click on the URL, browser is designed to make everything secure, right? But remember, we're hosting our website on one door. And we're trying to access another door. You think that it's gonna give you the same information? No, right? So each door has its own corridor, and that corridor is gonna lead you to the resource. So if you're using HTTPS, it's port 443, where if you're hosting on port 80, that's a different corridor. It's kind of like I send you down the hallway, which leads somewhere else, and I'm telling you to find me where I'm standing in a different hallway, right? So that's not going to work. So make sure you remove the HTTP. Yeah, I think it's not letting me, also blocking. So take a screenshot for me here. The service is just running, that's all it matters too. But
you have to put colon 9000.
Yeah, the port specifically. You're right. I forgot about that. I think in my previous video, yeah, because we hosted it on 9000. Yeah, thank you, Christian. So if you put 9000, you see your HTML or your index page. So let me fix that. Colon 9000. Make sure we add that. Add the 9000 to step 22. You can type in the URL, the entire URL on the browser application. Oops. Or you can just use the command. So it should say welcome to my server. That's how you bind. Now, if you bind it at another port, right, then you just use another port. But like I said, if you put HTTP only the IP address, guess what happens? It takes you to port 80. If you have HTTPS, it takes you to port 443. So that's different corridor, right? You cannot go to that specific room, right, if you're going down a different hallway. So we have to go down the right hallway by using the port. Now we are going to fully start NGINX. So you can minimize the browser if you like, and then we're going to do a sudo system control. NGINX. It's going to ask you for password. Just type that in. Now I'm going to test the localhost. I mentioned before that localhost pertain to the loopback, right? So let's say Firefox, HTTP, and instead of using the IP, I'm going to do localhost. So it's loading a different page. Why? Because it's a different corridor, right? Once you start NGINX, it's open, it's using port 80, which is a different corridor for your web server. Whereas your index page is on port 90, which is a different corridor. Okay? And then if you use 443, that's HTTPS, that's another corridor. So you have to know which corridor, which port to really send the traffic to, right? You see the difference? This one, which is the index page, and this one, right? So the localhost is going to default to the static Apache page because we just started NGINX and that's at port 80. So I'm turning on these web services so you can see when you scan like the type of services that you're using. Okay, what is shown on the web page? You can say Apache 2 page. Now we can minimize this and come back to our command line, and we're going to use Telnet. Telnet is a service that we can directly connect to our system, maybe for configuration or other purposes. If it is open, it's going to allow you to connect. So I know that port 80 is open because I just enabled that for damn vulnerable web app and also my web server, right? You saw that we landed on that page. So let's see if we can connect. And the telnet command, you just use the IP address and then space and then the port value, which is 80. So it tells me that I am connected, right? So why is this used? Well, the attacker is going to try to see if they can telnet into your system. If they can telnet into your system and it doesn't require authentication, then they are going to be able to configure your system or reconfigure your system. Okay. And that goes for switches, routers, servers, endpoint system, etc. So I can go through corridor 80, port 80, to connect to the system. Take a screenshot when it shows connected. Is it successful? It is connected, so yes, right? It tells you. But if you're unable to connect, it'll tell you not unable to connect, right? Usually it's gonna wait. There's a lag, there's a delay. You typically see that with no connection. All right, we talked about wget today. You are going to use it, right, to grab the banner for the server. So I can copy this. So in wget command, it does submit the request, right? And what it does is it tells you the timestamp, right? The how it resolved. And the option S, it's going to go further on how it's going to be able to obtain. So it's not able to, if it's unable to do that, it's going to reattempt. You see that with HTTP. You see that here. And then it's able to get to the index.html, you see? So it got to the landing page there. And it loads the landing page to, so if I'm using the browser, I'm going to see welcome to my page, right? The index page. So this is what's happening in the background when the user access your web server, right? wget commands shows you the behind the screen on what's happening between two systems communicating. So we submit, right, as a client to ourselves as a server, and it loads the page 100% successful. And it saves that, and that's what you see on the client system, right? So it starts and it's finished, and it tells you that one file was loaded because that's the HTML, the index.html. Okay? So it tells you the content length. So am I able to see the server software? It doesn't really give me too much about the actual software there, but then let's try the curl. All right, let me pull this up a little bit. Oh, that's the one I wanted to keep. So for the curl is, this is what you're gonna get. This is the actual HTML code of your Apache page. Okay. You see all the border, the font, the prettiness on your browser that you see. So it's still gonna give you the landing page, right, through port 80, and it's telling you the warning. Remember we talked about that, right? Um ASCII intended, and it's trying to resolve with the switch. So it tells you the HTML document that was used for the port 80, which is back to the local host. That's what we saw earlier, right? So you see two different things. When you use a wget, where did it go? To the index.html, right? Now for the curl with the switch S and I, it takes you to the Apache page. That's what you see as coded in HTML. Because it's hosted on this IP address, which is our local system. Another command that you can use is a web. Okay, this comes with Kali. It does banner grabbing for web applications specifically. Okay, so on top of what you see with wget and curl, you can also use web, and you just need to type in the domain name or the public IP. So, not too much detail, but you do see status code. That means that my server's alive and responding. Right? In the server setup, it doesn't really, I didn't configure it to say like US or country code. But it does tell me the package that I'm running for my web server, which is nginx. Okay? And then the title of my landing page, the default page. Okay? So if you want to grab quick banner, right, or check to see if that server's alive and responding and to your request, you can use web. Okay, so now we are going to do a little bit of active scanning. This is going to tell you to the specific port. And unlike the previous lab, I add in a little bit more argument in the actual execution of that app. So that way you can see, like, you can control the intensity of how you scan, right? Sometimes we want a lot, which use up a lot of resources and bandwidth. Sometimes we can lower it. So the intensity value, and we are able to get the version, and we are targeting the corridor, the port 80. So in the same terminal, once you run the web, you can run the next command. Sorry, let me try to leverage my... Now, as you run Nmap with criteria, it's going to launch specific scripts. Hold on a second, I'll be there. It's going to scan the target, right? And it tells you again, because we're only targeting port 80, that's what you only see as port 80 open. And it tells you that we are running web service, HTTP, and nginx for web service.
Okay, so from there, you turn up and then you put WH. It's not fast. That's not an issue. It's not equal to this. That's it. Using RAM for this one. Let's try this first. But yeah, this one you have to put in the 9,000, the full 9,000 to bring to the I think it's holding processes, that's what it's doing. So your processor is finished. So if this used to be like this, it was close, yeah. But here's the line. So now it's touching the next one. So sometimes it's getting very much up in front of it. It's just holding the processes. And that could be a hard position or it's a hypervisor. We'll try it again and show you the For which one? Yeah, you're supposed to get the index HTML, right? Like this. I rerun 27 for you. Is that the curl?
No, it's
W get?
W.
Yeah. So it loads your index HTML.point2, right? So that's basically a get. It's like landing on the page with your browser application. Yeah. So it's like behind the scene. So if I can look behind the scene when you are accessing a certain URL, that's what it looks like. Yeah. If it's not able to connect, it'll tell you that it's, trying to resolve again, right? Sometimes there's a delay and then it's connecting and it's connected. So once the server is connected, the request is then being responded. And so the server gives you your landing page, which is your index file. And it's going to load it like this. So technically you download an index file, And all of these files go into your temporary file in Windows systems or your OS. And then, eventually your page file gets replaced. Your temp internet files is where things go for your web. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So once we have the port information, which is what I did here, right? It's going to launch the Nmap and then it's going to tell you, right, the version, which is the NGINX, and the service. That's my web service, right, at port 80. That's an open port. That's an open corridor that leads us to our web server. Take a screenshot, write down your open port and the software that's used. So if you are pen testing, you have to look into the flaws of the NGINX for web services, right?
And there's documentation for it, the CVEs, and how you can resolve that problem. Then we also can run the NSC script. So Nmap is written with different scripts that you can pull to be able to grab the banner. Okay. So we are gonna use the banner script and see if we can get similar, same, or different result. So how did that go? Did it go through? What web? Did it go through? Did it? Maybe restart it. It won't. It won't do anything. So, yeah, and see how you can do Control Alt Delete to release the current process from the outside inside and see. If not, shut it down. What it does is it's going to try to see the status. Try to reopen it. Yeah, sometimes it's when it's not responding like that, it could possibly it's trying. So you have to set it up. Yeah, just follow the step. Go back to. We went all the way to not to yesterday. Oh no, Monday. Yeah, so I think we ended up with I did all the way, so you should be able to. So once you have that running, if you have Kali limits already, you can just you don't have to actually use the same one. Other questions? All right. So for the banner grabbing, right? It's going to tell me more. It tells me that I have a bind at 9,000. That's what we did with Python version, right? When you did that command Python 3-N. So it shows that, and that's at port 9,000, and that's your first index file, and port 80 is for the Apache one. And it tells me that the server header, remember we talked about the header, it shows me that I'm running Python and simple HTTP version 0.6. So when you grab the banner, it tells you the version of the software that you're using for your web server, right? And when you bind it with Python, it tells you the current version of Python. So that's a little bit more detail compared to the last command in set 30. Now, Nicto allows us to also scan the system, and it is an active tool, just like Nmap. So H stands for host, okay? And you want to follow the option H with an IP address. So when you do that, it's going to set this target IP for the host. And so you can see, right? Target IP, this is the IP. The host name, we don't have a name for our server, so it refers to the IP again. But if you name your server like my web server, it's going to show that there, the identity of the server. And then it's going to tell you the target port is port 80, right? So if I don't put in a parameter for port or a switch option for port, it's going to go to the default port, port 80, and it's going to launch the scan. This is really good at giving you, right, the package that's used or the software, and then also the related vulnerabilities with that software, right? Like
X content type options header is not set, so that's a flaw. So that's one vulnerability. And you can go down, you can go down and it talks about like other vulnerabilities. So, um, credential issues, etc. So, is there any kind of header that's missing? Right? We see the X content type options is missing. There might be others if depending on the server. Then we can also use a thing called HTTP print or HTTP print, right? This is a way that we can obtain system information, but we need to install it. It doesn't come with Kali. So these tools are also used for admin purposes, right? Like if you do system admin and you're trying to analyze it to see how it's connecting, how it's responding, and then pen testing purposes as well. Type in that. So once the installation is done, you can also check how it's done. Okay, yeah, sometimes when you see that happens, or you restart. End that process. So we install HTTP print for step 33. To perform it, you need to make a file. So in Linux, you can make files multiple ways. You can use a cat command, you can use an echo command, and you can use a touch command. So a touch command basically just create the file for you there. So in the next step, we're gonna make a file. Did you have a question? Okay. So we're gonna do a touch and we're gonna name our file signature. That text. Then what we're gonna do next is we are gonna scan it, right? And use that file for our scan. So so you have to make a file, and whatever the name of the file is, you're gonna plug that in with the option S when you're using HTTP print. So here I just have you take a screenshot, right? And I put down that this uses ICMP as a service. If you have taken networking class, you know ICMP is used for ping, echo, and request. So a way that it can gather information about the server is to ping it, right? Traceroute also use ICMP, so it's a way to find path to that server also use ICMP, right? So hprint use that, and if you want, you can do a cat command for that signature.txt. Let's do that. But it tells you here as a result already. Okay? So when you use HTTP print, you need to have some kind of text file for it. So you have to make it and then you use it so that way it can plug in, right, the signature into that file so that way it can identify the service that's used. So it uses ICMP request for that host, and it did time out because ping does time out. There's a time to live for it. Okay. All right. So I have about 40 minutes, so we'll see if we can get through part C and going into part D. I cover a little bit of this for my 41A class. This teaches you how to configure FTP server or SFTP server, right? In Linux, you just pull the package for it, which is
your VSFTPD. So if you run the command to install right here, it's going to install the package for that service. And then once you have the software, you are then going to modify the configuration file. It's like going into settings of that server and then add the features. So we are in Linux, you use a configuration file to turn things on or off, add things to it like authentication, connection, etc. Okay. So once I have the installation for my FTP, my VSFTPD, this is what you use for Linux, we are going to back up our configuration file. So in case we mess up, we have the original to go back to, right? So we're going to move it, and then we're going to configure. So that's a good practice, is to make sure that you have a copy of your old configuration before you start tweaking it. Okay? So step 36 allows us to do a backup of our configuration file, and now we are going to edit our configuration file. So if you're editing like wireless setting, you can do it through graphical user interface or through the configuration file this way. Now we're actually editing the configuration of our FTP server. Okay. So a way that we can do this is to use a text editor. And Nano comes equipped with all Linux versions, and also you can also install and use Nano for Apple System Terminal. They call it console, right? So same thing. Because you know that terminal for Apple is very close to Linux terminal, right? Apple uses a slightly different command for pulling and installing and accessing a little bit different, but you can use a text editor to write code, to modify file, etc. Okay, so I'm going to use Nano here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, right, all of these settings that we don't want it to listen. See you later. Bye. We don't want anonymous login because the old FTP server, the non-secure one, you can log in using anonymous user. That's how they got the group called, right? Anonymous user with no password or a default password. You can have different settings as you read through, right? And including the certificate.